Dear community, I would like to beg you to please have patience with everything unresolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves as if locked rooms or books written in a foreign language you can't yet read. Don't search for the answers, which could not be given to you because you wouldn't understand them anyway. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. And perhaps then, someday into the future, without even noticing it, you will live your way into the answer. So these are words from a 19th century German poet, Rainer Maria Rilke, and words that have stuck with me for the course of my career as a designer and a researcher. So I invite you to join me in a journey that is both inward and outward. So the journey of a designer out in the field and some of the things I've discovered about myself in the process of doing design research. In 2010, I found myself here, very junior designer. It was my first time doing proper field research. This is Chiang Rai, the northern region of Thailand. I was there to work with a foundation and local communities, hill tribes, who I could not communicate in English with. And I was completely out of depth. Everything I knew felt so useless. Everything I learned as a designer and all my education felt completely useless. But yet, I could connect to these people on a human level. And I found myself journaling, writing a lot about design, about my learnings, more than the actual design project I was there to do. And little did I know then that this ritual, this practice of writing about design and this reflection on my practice would become the core of what I do today. So after this, I enrolled in what would be my first ever solo big project, a 5-year project, all by myself. Got to travel around the world, worked with over 20 different startups from San Francisco to New Delhi, India, in search of one question, which was, how might we design for qualities? The qualities being these intangible, experiential things we feel when we love a product or a service or a brand or a community, but we can't quite put into words, and we definitely cannot measure it. So I was looking for these qualities in businesses and social businesses that I felt had them. And as a designer, like all designers do, I thought, wow, well, if I can understand what the qualities are, then I can design a tool that will then help people who are struggling to find their qualities, find them, and everything would be great. Not quite. It turned out to be a lot trickier. But I did learn that there's 4 qualities that I found that are cross-cultural. One of them is our understanding of time, the value of time. And we heard a great example from the supersonic plane talking about time. So time is the intangible thing that we value. And the time that things take to make or to grow is something that is very important. And I found common in different geographic locations, but also different kinds of businesses. Another quality is community. So all of us here today. The importance of gathering physically. Another quality is relationships. So knowing your customer's first name, how that changes everything in the relationships and trust that you build. And a 4th quality being provenance and place, so being really proud of where you're coming from, displaying this sort of the pride and the honor and the integrity of where things are coming from. Now, as it's common in research, there's many unexpected things that come up. And I learned something from all of these startups and social businesses I worked with. All of them seem to mention this inner life, this kind of spiritual side to the business, to the design of the business, design of the product. And I was fascinated by this. I was like, forget the project, I'm a lot more interested in this now, because it was so mysterious. And as a researcher does, putting myself out into the field, the research really became a me search. And I found, well, how can I, as a designer and a researcher, explore also what is the relationship between the inner life that I cultivate and the products and services I design out into the world. So what is this relationship between the inner life that I'm creating and the things I'm creating out into the world? Now, going back to Rainer Maria Rilke, live the questions now. And friends, we are now foot into the fourth industrial revolution, right? So we've had brilliant examples just before me of what this means and where we're going, where we're moving forward in terms of technology and design and futures thinking. And more than ever before, this search into what it means to be human, what is our human condition moving forward, and where does spiritual life sit in that is incredibly important. So I invite you to think about this with me. For me, the epiphany came with design dharma. So dharma meaning the higher sense of duty, right? Our call to action, our sense of purpose. And as designers and makers and doers, this is quite important to think about and reflect on. I'll share with you 5 little nuggets of what my design dharma is and how I've come to find these. So as a very lucky designer, I've gotten to work and do field research in many different parts of the world, all of which has really informed the way that I see design moving forward into the future. And these principles I'll share with you now, they're not quantifiable in terms of data, right? They're not things I can measure, but they are things that I have seen to be crucial to the work I want to dedicate myself to. First one is Tatwamasi. So this is in Bali, Indonesia, and I learned about the concept of Tatwamasi, which in Sanskrit means I am you, you are me, and the importance of considering this in all design work that should be a co-creation with the other. Design is the practice of discerning what is changeable. Now, the word discernment, I underlined that word. I really like that word, and it's an important one. So, to be at peace with the things we cannot change, and to work on the things that we know we can change. Designers have empathy to themselves. Now, I wrote this down in my notebook in India when a local Indian designer, young designer, said this to me. Designers should have empathy to themselves first. And I thought, wow, as a designer, I'm always thinking of the user, the end user, and I definitely know how to use tools and methods to build empathy for them, but do I ever consider myself in the process of designing and the things I put myself through to learn more about the other? Your alchemy of design is how things come together, sometimes in unexpected ways. Now, I underlined the word alchemy because for the longest time, I didn't feel like I had the permission to use beautiful words to describe my work, because design is about process and function and efficiency. And I've given myself the permission to use words that I consider more beautiful, more poetic, to describe the work that I do. You can't separate the designer from the design work. Now, you might say this is true of art, because the artist, the work embodies the artist and the mindset and the experience of the artist. But could we not say the same for design? Even if design most of the time is a collaborative process, does it not also embody the people involved in the process? So design helped to make us human. And my challenge is to understand now where are we moving forward in times of unsettledness, of questions that we have answers we don't have yet, exponential technologies, vocabulary, words that we're still trying to define in this present moment. To create a life where work and life are one thing. The work that we choose to do, the things that we choose to put out into the world, should not be separate from our own human experience of the life that we lead. And I come back to this question: what is the relationship between the inner life we cultivate and the products and the services and the brands that we put out into the world? So I teach at a university in Berlin, and I feel very lucky to spend time with the next generation of designers and engineers. And this question we discuss very often. So I want to share this one with you. This is from one of my students, and he says that knowing you made something that helps other people feel happy, that is what gives the real high. And although idyllic as it may sound, there's some truth to that. And coming back to the question, what is the relationship between the inner life we cultivate and the things we put out into the world? So I invite you to consider this question with me, to share with me. And I want to give you 4 little tips on how you might discover for yourself what is your design dharma. The first tip is to go on immersions, right? So as researchers, we're out in the field a lot. So you spend time. You spend time and you observe and you let things sink in, people, sounds, smells. The second tip is to give yourself the permission to use more beautiful words to describe your work, right? Not everything has to be a technical explanation. So we can infuse our work with more poetry, more poetics. Another tip is around the qualities. So keeping in mind place, time, community, and relationships. What does that mean for your organizations? What does that mean for the products and services that you're building? And the final tip, not so much a tip, but it's giving you the permission, or rather giving yourself the permission to consider these questions and these paradigms as we enter this 4th industrial age, and as we continue building amazing products and experiences and systems and interactions, to consider how do we infuse the machine with more soul, right? Because one thing I truly believe is we've always had design manifestos throughout history, and the next manifestos to come are quiet and inward-looking. Thank you so much.